The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Right? And then here's my mute. People can hear me right now, but I Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me online? Okay. Who's attending remotely? Maybe just type in okay, I got thumbs up, so that's perfect. Thank you. Today, Tableau User Group, thank you for coming in person. There's obviously options are online in person, so either way is fantastic. Today, we have a couple presenters. I'm going to We have two presenters today. However, one I don't think is here yet, so we're just going to go with the who was going to be our first presenter. So we'll have our second presenter present first, and then anything could happen. So we'll just go with the flow there. Maybe we'll have more personal discussions later. So using Tableau for interactive dashboards is a presentation that Sergio Contreras is going to be hopefully presenting today. Another conversation and presentation is a deeper look at Tableau Prep, which is going to be presented by Ryan Young. And then, well, actually what I'll do initially is I'll talk and give the Tableau updates and miscellaneous info, just some quick points that we can dive into. Okay, just kind of some interesting facts of Tableau server updates. One is that we have updated the server from back in February to 2018.3. So that is the version that we are currently on at the moment. And we will be upgrading to the next version, which is 2019.1.3 on June 2nd. And if there's any questions regarding that, please send us an, we have an architecture team, unfortunately. Well, actually, Jayesh is here today. Thank you. Sorry. Jayesh is our Tableau server expert, and he can answer some questions if you have any questions about the server today. What's always a nice, instead of me going through every single feature, which is nice to have, Tableau does a fantastic job about updating their website, and I don't know if people have gone out to check out their website, but they have it categorized in the different releases. So depending on where we are in our release cycle, you can go in and see all the different and new features that will be coming up. So you can spend time looking into some of those new features online. Again, there's an email that you can send to the help desk if you have any questions, or you can reach out to Jayesh. Another thing that came up that I had personally taken part of is Tableau sent out an email, and there's some webinars, and they're free. So, and they're an hour long, and they're just random types of discussions that they're having with some of their experts that they go through interesting things such as these were in the past, the three below, like accelerating your advanced analytics with Python and mapping and level of detail expressions. Those types of content are really interesting to see how other people are putting and integrating these features into what they're building. There's another one today, which is at noon. So if you haven't had enough Tableau to talk today, you can run back to your office and sign up for the interactive analytics with Tableau set actions, which is today at noon. But these are just some other ways that you guys can just dive in. So just in time, do you need a little time to get settled?
Yeah.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll swap presenters so that Ryan will present first. I'll give you some time to, I'm going to speed ahead. So deeper look at Tableau Prep. Ryan's going to take over now and talk and dazzle us with all this great information.
Well, that's very high praise. Dazzle might be a little far. But thank you, everyone. My name is Ryan Young. I am the Research and Assessment Analyst with the Office of the Minority Student Affairs here at the Urbana campus. And most of my job is actually building us Tableau dashboards. Is kind of how that's developed. I oversee all assessment and research activities within our office. And we actually are tasked with serving about 37% of all undergraduates on campus. So when I do a Tableau dashboard to track our students, we really have to pull in all undergrads if I want a good comparative sample of how our students are faring versus others. So in this past year, that was just under 12,000 students. And I'm also the marketing and communications coordinator. I know none of us have one job on campus, so I also do all the marketing. Current projects. So just to give you a little background of how Tableau Prep specifically has become such an integral part of what I do. I put together, using iPad's data, a national comparison between Illinois and all other undergraduate institutions in the country. I have our main OMSA student dashboard, which is a live look at our tutoring services, at our mentoring programs, our TRIO SSS program, all feed direct live data into our dashboards to see how those students are faring, how their grades are looking, a top to bottom look at what we can be doing at the micro level to make sure our students are succeeding throughout the course of the semester. And bigger projects like graduation rates, persistence, inter-college transfer, and what I'm sure everyone kind of in the student affairs side of things, we all have some sort of end of semester survey or something like that. So my main philosophy is, Good, perfect, okay. My big philosophy is that at least when it comes to the data that the people on the ground working with students in my staff is, I want to be able to make sure that I can give them their data as they're generating it. And Tableau, I mean, that's kind of why we all use Tableau, is that interactivity, that up to the moment, those live looks. And what I found is that Tableau Prep, which Tableau describes as allowing you to combine, shape, and clean your data for analysis, really speeds up that process of getting that data into views in a reliable, manageable, visible way that's not me just running like 30 VLOOKUPs in Excel all day, every day, which is what it would be otherwise. So just basic kind of shape here. You get three main screens when you're, do people use Tableau Prep a lot, a little, a few people have, yeah. So that's why I noticed that at the last time we came that not a lot of people were using it. And I found, especially with the cyclical nature of working on a collegiate campus, I'm doing the same data polls at the beginning and the end of the semester. I'm shaping my data the same way when we get that new class. So having a tool like this that I can just roll over to the next year and 90% of my data input work is done has been a huge success for me, and I've only been here for 3 semesters. So what you see is you have the visual representation of the flow. That's what they call it. And you see you have your inputs on the far left, and every other step is a cleaning and processing step, joining data together, either if you're just smashing everything together as a union, or if you want to be more selective and do a join. So you have your, I'll be respectful for the people online, the union symbols here and the joins. And then up things to getting fancy with pivots, aggregates, combining your data in some way together, and then your outputs. And as you can see, you can have multiple outputs. So that's really nice as well. I use a lot. I have some things that output as a Tableau extract that drop right into Tableau. Or another thing we'll talk about a little more later is that I've started using Tableau Prep for non-Tableau projects. So combining data together, going from Excel, putting a few things together, and coming back to Excel, you don't have to use Tableau Prep only with Tableau Desktop as your end use. Another really interesting thing that is very beneficial is the what they call the column profile view, and that gives you live descriptives of each of your variables. And when you click on anything like you would expect with Tableau, you see where it's represented in all other variables. So here they, in this sample picture, we're looking at just the corporate segment. Oh, excuse me. Just the corporate segment, and everywhere else you see blue in that, those are just the corporate cases highlighted. And you can hover over and see what percent. So for example, what percent of standard class shipping comes from corporate clients. So it's a way I find it's most helpful actually in catching errors as I'm going. And if something doesn't look right, you get that immediate feedback that, okay, did I code a variable wrong? Did I exclude something I shouldn't have excluded? And finally, at the bottom, you see the row level data that's applicable to whatever you have filtered. So you can see these are all corporate clients, and you're actually seeing row level data. So you get this, highest level, mid level, and lowest level data all at once the entire time that you're working through your data. So this is it'll just play in the background and loop to kind of see what you get. So some of the highlights that Tableau touts is that it allows you to create new non-aggregate data, non-aggregate variables as you go. So whether you're simply adding two things together, if you're, in this case, I think they're showing you how to clean names together based on their fuzzy clustering algorithms, and basically just join data from numerous sources. So another bigger point, and maybe Jayesh knows a little bit more than I do, but they've started to split and provide more Tableau Prep server side functionality, and that they call that the Tableau Prep conductor. And this allows you to publish and run flows in your server environment, share your data sources securely, and create an environment where everyone in your organization can work with prepped and up-to-date data. So I know there's some functionalities around scheduling flows to be run, automatically importing new data, getting those outputs, and taking, unfortunately, what I do right now is I have about 7 flows I have to run every time I want to update my data, and most of them are quick, but having as their prep very much feels like a product that is still developing and still growing, whereas I kind of feel like desktop is kind of starting to actually feel like a fully fledged, fully built out program that they're adding things to. Years ago, Tableau also had this feeling like, I want to do that, oh, it's coming. Prep kind of feels like that right now. Yeah.
Good question. So is it Tableau Prep, is that part of the desktop?
Yes, it's a separate program, but if you have the creator's license, their new the desktop license that everyone's getting now, you also get a Tableau Prep key as well.
So if you have like a free, I guess, educator license,
you should, yeah. If you have like the faculty license, I believe you also I think it's the same. So a little bit of look at how I use Prep, and I do this to show you how you might as well, essentially. So most of my data comes from the data warehouse. We look at so much undergrad data, specifically that's the best place to get it for. A lot is generated by Excel. I have some less tech savvy folks in my office who want to do all of their logging of their student interactions in Excel. And they were doing it in Word before I started. So we're slowly getting them to do something. Would I love them to use a fully fledged case management system that I could just outport something? Absolutely. So you'll see one of my flows later looks a little funky, and it's to incorporate the 250 Excel sheets I have to combine together to get onto a flow. I get some data from the office's admissions, specifically looking at whether students come from a low-sending county, that's one of the populations we're charged with serving, or if they had a fee waiver when they applied, we include that. In student affairs, we have Campus Labs as our primary survey collection tool. So I have Campus Labs output, tracking who comes to our mentoring, our quick response feedback on all of our mentoring and tutoring sessions come through Campus Labs. This is Tutor Track. We have a tutor management software where when students come to our tutoring center, they swipe in. And I get some, very rarely, the Office of Financial Aid blesses me with a little bit of data. And we get some information about which students are eligible for our SSS services. So this is a really wide types of data, formats of data I'm getting coded and variable named things that I wouldn't pick, but since they're coming from outside sources, I don't have control over it. So having an environment like Prep that is flexible for me to make all those changes, is stable, easy to use, and consistent really helps me deal with all this data ambiguity that there's just nothing I can do to fix this problem. So this is a few sample flows that I use. So this top one, this is the one that I was talking about to get all these 250, I think it's 252 this semester, individual Excel sheets for every student. And it's literally just 3 flows of unions until the end. And it works. And I don't have to go through and hand copy. Setting up the Excel sheet for them was hard enough as it was. And I don't want to go through and hand copy 250 Excel sheets every time I have to pull their data. So that's big but simple. The next one, this is simply when I have to do, we're doing a few projects that are looking at which courses at the course level are in particular difficult for our students. So this looks simple, but this middle flow probably takes 45 minutes at least to run because it's in the 20 million rows range. So that's something to think. We'll talk about a little more when I get to my wrap-up thoughts. It can look simple, but it can be complicated and long. And finally, this is just kind of what my average flow looks like. We see that's multiple semesters, multiple outputs, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Some weird multiply referencing the same data source, but it's flexible and it can get a lot done. So things I really like about Tableau Prep. It's a tremendous time saver. Once you have things dialed in, it's click the play button and you know it's going to work. Like a lot of the Tableau products, it's intuitive. Things kind of work the way you expect them to work. I like the great quick descriptives as you go through it. You can color code and label things. So if you want all of your data from housing to look the same color or have the same label, it's completely flexible to do that. And it's flexible in inputs and outputs. So the Tableau data files coming out, Excel, CSV files, and incoming, basically anything that Tableau can accept input, Tableau Prep can as well. And like I mentioned before, it's not for just cleaning in Tableau, but taking survey data. I do it all the time. I take it from Excel, pass it through Prep, and I get it back in Excel on the way out. Things I like less, it's gotten a lot better. I would say between the beginning of 2018 to now, they've really dialed in a lot of the optimization. So things are running faster, things are running smoother. You're getting less errors that aren't your fault. The automated cleaning that they kind of touted, you see the animations of all the time, is never really going to be as strong as you expect it might be, especially when it comes to dates and numbers in general. You're just going to get less automation. You will always have less automation with numbers. And I always have to do some hand checking. And finally, if you start getting into larger projects, resource management for your computer is an issue. There's definitely been times I've set things to run and I have no hard drive space anymore. Simply because the temporary files, when you're running these huge, it needs the space. So that's a thing to consider. And the last pet peeve that will probably be changed eventually is that you can't. So those pretty pictures I've made, it would be love to take and highlight it and copy it into a new flow to reuse some data structure. You can't copy and paste like that between flows. So it's always something you feel like you should be able to do, but really when you start a new flow, you have to kind of do it from the ground up.
So you're saying that one flow can't trigger another flow, that the output of one flow can't be the input of?
It can be the input, it just can't automate. So that question is, it absolutely can. I have 7, most of my primary work is 7 flows that all work together to get to 1. Doing it automatically is something that's the Tableau Prep Conductor server side thing that they'll be expanding functionality for, I'm sure. But it won't automatically open the next flow. It's a separate file and run it itself. But even if say I wanted to take this and just copy and paste this and make it appear down in this one, you can't do that, which I find frustrating at times when I have to completely rebuild. This is you probably see it says AmpFlow 4.1. There were definitely 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0 before that, and they all just had to get built by scratch. So a few tips and tricks. Be patient and intentional. A lot of things with Tableau, it's really nice to just get in there and click around and you eventually maybe get to where you want to go. Tableau Prep's a little less forgiving and it'll throw some errors and it'll freeze you out. Another consideration you have is to what do you want to do in prep, and what do you eventually want to do in Tableau desktop. So I've gone back and forth of when I want to rename some values or give values aliases, is that better to do, do I have to do a calculation on something eventually, but I already gave it an alias, so I can't do that natively. What things require aggregate functions eventually. So if you have multiple lines of data for a single student, a lot of that has to be done in Tableau desktop, not Tableau Prep, because Prep can't do aggregate functions. And now speaking of another thing, one of the biggest things I found is that there's a lot of the data output, especially from the warehouse, sometimes has duplicate rows or has duplicate rows after you've cleaned them a little bit. And that blows up the size of your files. So this aggregate step here, one of the biggest tips I found is throwing that at the very end and putting all the variables you can either do a group or a sum with them to aggregate them. If you throw all of your variables into a group, it will automatically delete duplicate files for you very simply. It'll speed up your flows, make your file sizes smaller, so everything runs quicker. So who is Tableau Prep good for? Anything that has to be run repeatedly or anything on a semesterly schedule, I highly recommend looking into it. And I would love to answer any questions now or at the very end. Yeah.
This is kind of I don't know if you can do this because I don't need that on, but
Sure.
using Tableau Prep versus doing that same kind of functionality in another tool,
Mm-hmm.
like Untitled.
Sure. Yep.
Or like stats.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of that, to me, I think I like Prep so much because I have that diversity of data inputs. If I already had everything in another data management system, I would be less gung-ho about Prep. I think just because of the ease of getting it into the environment. And a lot of times when you have data into a Tableau environment, and I find a lot of times that when you have data in those systems, they might be cleaner already, whereas this is great for raw data that you have to clean anyway. So I'm going in and I'm correcting things like one of my SSS advisors wrote 3018 instead of 2018. People put wrong names, people coded the wrong class. So really that low level data cleaning. And the benefits of Prep are that I get the ability to the joins and the unions, but at the same time, I'm also renaming variables, changing variable coding. Whereas I would think a lot of data like if I'm only working with data from the warehouse, I can write a good SQL command and I know I'm going to get clean data out exactly what I need. If I have to add all this other unclean data to it, being able to see it and work with it in a thing like Flow, I think that's where the benefits are, or Prep.
So when you talk about data cleaning, you're talking about like, you gave an example of plates.
Yeah.
I'll do it that way.
Yep.
So you can actually put something in your code that does like an analysis of the data and converts it? Or?
So yeah, go ahead.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So So the question is Tableau Prep good compared to other using other database systems, other things like SQL, doing everything by hand in SQL, things like that? Is that fair? A quick summary of your question? Yeah. That was the question. And sorry, what was your last follow-up?
And then the second question has to do with the data cleaning, like using it, for example, cleaning dates.
Yeah, so using Tableau for cleaning dates, names, any other input. So let me go back to this view. So a lot of times how I do it is you get these, they call it summary data. So if, for example, in this row, these row IDs, it looks like row IDs are running between 0 and 10,000. If someone put in an extra 0 and now their number was 100,000, you would see this extra spike, this way big spike down here, or many, many lines down. The same thing with dates. There would be these nice descriptive curves would look very different. And I kind of know what mistakes they make. So I've trained myself to just glance over the fields that I know might have a problem and literally look for things that don't look right. And then I can go in and click on it and look at the row level data and see that, oh yeah, Dr. Escobar wrote 3018 instead of 2018.
Okay, so basically you're saying that the tool allows you to manually find those
Yep.
problems more quickly and
Yes.
solve them as opposed to.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, manually it does, yeah, manually and the automatic functionality it does have. And that's what we saw on this with, you can see here all of these different ways that they wrote C. Arnold get collapsed down into this one. So that fuzzy clustering that they do. Which has its own set of concerns. But any other questions? Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit more? Like,
Sure.
Is it doing that automatically?
It
or are
is.
Okay.
You can do it either way, and I wish I could pause this. But as you can see, as it clicks on this, there's about 6 different ways that people wrote C. Arnold, E. Williams, and it's using some fuzzy clustering algorithm to say that these are similar enough, we're going to throw them together. You can also do it manually, and I do it manually most of the times because most of my numbers you see here, you can do it manual selection, pronunciation, or common characters. And when you're doing it by its hand, it looks like this, and you click on it, and you see all of the potential choices, and you just click next to it, and it'll group it. It'll just fire it up to the top and group it with the rest.
And would that be, like all those names are in the same data source, or?
How it would work on the output is that it would replace the data with just the saying C. Arnold. So it's recoding all of those variables to the same thing.
Like if you were trying to join 2 data sets and you were using name as one of your joins.
Sure.
That would help you.
It would, yeah. It would be as long as you did it after. So if I did this cleaning in this step here, and so if this row all has that cleaning going on, I could use the name as your primary key for that join there. As long as it comes after in the flow, because it literally flows through and does it in the order that you put it in. I think there's questions over here.
Quick question. You have a lot of working on Excel spreadsheets,
Mm-hmm.
and Excel has power functions
Mhm.
built into them, like power query and things.
Sure.
That can aggregate 200 plus spreadsheets
Yeah.
in one shot right there. Have you looked into using that?
There's using some of the power functions within Excel to make my work of dealing with all the sheets and stuff in Excel that I do a little quicker. I had, since they're not all exactly the same, it's a little finicky. I'm sure I could do it, but this way, since I'm going into the Tableau environment anyway, and there's some other stuff I want to do with it, it was just easier just to do it with this. Hmm?
You had mentioned that you're doing some aggregate work in desktop.
Yeah.
Because the prep can only do the grouping and
Mm-hmm.
Can you give a specific example?
Yeah. The biggest thing I run into, sorry, I'm so sorry. The question was working with aggregate functions that I'm doing in prep that we can't do, or that I'm doing in desktop that I can't do in prep. The biggest one is that almost every student in my data sets have more than one line of information. So whether that's what every class they took, every student attribute they have, and if we want to show up on a dashboard as a single student, we have to. It's the fixed variable or the fixed command in Tableau, and you can just collapse all rows with the same UIN down into a single output that will show up as one student on your dashboard. So you can't do that fixing in Tableau Prep. That has to be done in desktop. So I do that all the time. Mm-hmm.
Okay, when it's doing cleaning,
Yes.
say using fuzzy logic or something, does it maintain the old versus the new value? Is there record, like does it create another variable with a slightly different name or?
So the question was, when we're doing cleaning, does it keep the same does it keep the data somewhere? Not automatically, but you can easily do that. So you would just simply, when I want to maintain an old variable, I would just simply create a new variable, and that's a direct copy, and have it do the cleaning on that new variable so that you have the old and the new maintained. But if you just tell it to do it, you won't see that in the output data file.
So if you, if I can.
Please.
So if you, if you tell that like some data is wrong, then you'll define, okay, this 5 field doesn't look good, then you'll define it and you'll tell that's why they create a variable or something, and then you have to publish it and you can save it, and then every single time you run the flow, it will be like same exact thing. And if you like in the future, if you want to change it, you can go ahead and change the flow. So it's.
Now, I'm like, because I'm thinking, keep a record of how, like, when we get into the fuzzy logic thing and it, it merges all the Arnolds together,
Right.
to know that that's what it did behind the scenes, and then you
Yep.
say, oh no, there's 2 Joe Arnolds in kinesiology or something.
Yep.
The tool recognizes like 3 or 5 Joe Arnold, or like how people entered in the database or how they type it in so wherever you get data from. And then you have to tell like, okay, all these 5 people as one, these are one. Or maybe it's like these are UIN, right, from different attached to the something. And you can create a variable and then you can run it flow and it will give you the output. Like I use we have 2 different environments. I have users from one environment and another environment. And just the difference is like, I have to, how many number of users I have from the both environment and filtered out the common one or something. And for the union, it's very good actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really strong. And that's almost why, so we were talking about, if everyone didn't heard here, that no, it does, you would have to do something like I suggested to have 2 variables and not do the automatic filtering on one. But it doesn't change your input files, so you always have your input file to go back to. I was going to say something else, but I completely forgot it. I'm sorry.
And you can include like multiple files, like say,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a lot of worksheets or a lot of environment, you can put it in and then you can run it flow. And it's pretty nice tool actually. It's like separate from the Tableau desktop. It's not, it's and you have to have license for it.
Yeah. You have another question?
Oh, I was just thinking about the conversation. Is it possible to add another column? It's called like clean names.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You still have your original one.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think that.
What was the question?
Oh, so no, that was just a follow up. I don't. Just again to the suggestion to add another column, another variable, to maintain the old data before it does some cleaning steps. Yeah.
You said that it's not resource intensive.
Yep.
Is there any recommendation so that you better spend time on the system and
Yeah, the question, you have to do that every time. The question is, what are the minimum system requirements for prep? I'm sure they have it on their website. I don't know it off the top of my head. But it's really tied to how much you throw at it. So I can do even we had some test files that I could potentially show that even in the under 5 million rows, the 2 million rows, it'll run in a minute or 2. A lot of it has to do with your data structure that you're giving it and what you're asking it to do. So the more joins you have, the more complicated, like if you're joining on 2 or more fields, that bumps up the requirements. Even the order that you have things in your flow. So think about, I always try to make my file wide before I duplicate the rows, and it seems to have some success with that. But like I said, there's times where it can, if you just throw every data at it, it can easily munch through 400 or 500 gigabytes of hard drive space when you're trying to get to 25 million rows of data. You just have to be careful in splitting up what you're asking it to do when, and think about it. But it's in different points of the process are different resource intensity. So usually only at the beginning and end does it hit your CPU hard, but in the middle it's nothing but memory. And I mean, if you're filling 500 gigs of hard drive space, you're never going to have enough memory to manage that. It's just going to take it an hour or two to do it. So, all right, I think we should probably move on to the other one. Thank you all.
Ryan will be here at the end if you have any additional questions to ask him if they're specific. So, at any rate, sorry. Please.
I'm glad that he started. He seemed to be more funny presentation than mine, but sorry to be late, but I was confused. I will show some of my work at Tableau. I will talk about like a little bit about me. I'm currently a PhD student in urban and regional planning. Then you're thinking why I'm doing Tableau. I will explain. I work as a RA in the NCSA for 3 years, and I will start working as research programmer soon. Soon mean after I get my visa. In my previous life, I used to work with ClickView, so I was somehow involved with that. I don't know if you are familiar with ClickView. Was the competition for Tableau, and actually, when they asked me to do this, I said, "Why don't we start with ClickView?" And then $15,000 separate me from ClickView and Tableau. So I never heard about Tableau before coming here. We have 3 projects. One is the XSEDE dashboard that I wanted to show you. They have Blue Waters. I don't know if you're familiar with Blue Waters. It's the supercomputing that we have South Campus, and the industry dashboard. That is one of the newest that I got. But since we have a non-disclosure agreement, I cannot show you everything. As he said, we are basically everything. I work with the dashboard, I work as a programmer, and I do my full-time PhD program. What is XSEDE? If you're not familiar with XSEDE, it's one of the coolest projects that I have ever been. They give a supercomputer infrastructure to a university across the US, and they focus on minorities. And when we say minority, are non-white, non-Asian. So basically Afro-American, Latinos, and especially women. One of the key factors is trying to make women to be more active in supercomputing. And to give you just a number, only 6% of the female are using supercomputing now. So it's a very low number for women. So this is huge. But one of the problems of this project is that it's a virtual project. And what it doesn't mean, there is no organization behind that. So for instance, there are universities from Texas, Pittsburgh, Illinois. So people are hired by their own university, but they are 100% assigned to the project. So you don't have like a structure there's no like a boss that you can report. You have a technical boss that is the one that you report to XSEDE, but you have a functional boss that is the one that you at your university. So what was the challenge that they have? They have a quarter report that had 888 pages, and they have more than 100 KPIs and metrics. So if you think about scrolling to find data, it was almost impossible. And also, if it's a quarter data, you are 3 months behind. So if you want to make any decision, you are 3 months behind, and then you have you don't have the time to make any decision at all. And also, you have different levels of information. If you're a level 1 or top manager, you don't care about the 100 KPIs. You want to have a whole picture of how the project is doing, and then you have to scroll down which one is the one. And also, I will show you how the report was done. It was meaningful. It didn't have any meaning at all. So this is how the table looked like. If you see, we have a KPI, we have some targets, and then you have RPI1, they could get created. Instead of naming quarter, they both report periods. You know, scientific, they want to be crazy. But if you see that, do you see any decision, can you take any decision if you see that, for instance, number of page view, are you meeting the target? You just see a bunch of numbers that doesn't make any sense at all. You don't see what is the trend. For instance, here, if we have 80,000, and then you get 63, then you don't know what NA mean. Then you have double. So what was the effort there, or what was did you set up think about the second one, a 250,000, and then you have 1 million. So what was it was good, it was great, you did about, you were targeting too low, etc. So this is the kind of report that you see in the table. And also if you think about the organization was by table. But if you want to filter out what KPI do you really want to go, you have to understand what was the table and then find the KPI. So at the beginning, what they wanted is to have this structure and be able to replicate this, use Tableau to just copy and paste and get this table done and put it on the report. And I was like, no, don't do that. Yeah. It's like having like I don't know, like, so they want to replicate the table. I say, okay, why don't we do something else? And there was something that it was good and bad for me is that there was no data, no structure, no database, no nothing. So we have to start from scratch. And one of the person who was with me in that time was Chris Lehman, that was the one who presented before. So we both start like, okay, we have to do something else. So I will show you, I prefer links than. So the first thing that we did was just replicating. Yeah, probably, you're right. So if you see, this is just the same way of how the report looked like. So it was like some filter to fill out what by year, and by report date, and also trying to look. Those are the tables. You have 12 tables, 14 tables, but it didn't make sense because again, you still don't have like the only functionality is filtering by the table, and then maybe okay, we just want one of the KPI, and then I can just download them as a spreadsheet or a PDF or whatever. But for me, this was just nonsense. I mean, this is better doing HTML, pulling the data, or maybe using some Python code and download as a Excel file. So it was not giving any value added to what I was thinking. So then we have something more beautiful, at least for me, maybe. Let me put it a little bit less. So this is the same, or I will show something. So what we did here is different. We present the same table just to people be able to see the data, but then we create graph, and we create graph with some lights. So say, okay, in this quarter, you were not meeting the target. In this one, you were somehow close, so you were in the. So we had a lot of tooltips to make clear what you were doing. So, for instance, your status is yellow. What I mean that you were in the 60 and the 80%. And then you see that we have actually the legend for each of them. So what we were trying to say, okay, this is the target that you were set for that date. You were only getting 10. So we were explaining what was the goal, what was the table. So if you see this one, you're knowing how was the trend in terms of getting your KPI. So here you say, okay, you were always in green, so you were doing a good job. So this was meant for people who was taking decision. The other table was just trying to meet the requirement of getting the report done. Other thing that we did, it was this one that this was by year. So you were comparing year and here quarter by quarter. The other thing that we did, do you see that now we have all the KPIs so we can pull them and search by name instead of just remember what was the table all about. So one of the issues that we have here, let me go back to, do you see that we have 101 here is that, for instance, there was no, we have to combine text and numbers. Another thing that we didn't like is, for instance, this report one, there was no data. So we cannot put 0, or actually we have to put some values because you didn't put the data, or for instance, was annually report. So you don't have values for that period. So we have to create separate tables, one for period, one for yearly data. So this seemed to be easy, but we have more like 60 tables that we have to create to do this. So I was probably answering her question that in my case was easier to do it at a SQL level rather than using prep, because my challenge was speed. If you think about it, this is a person who will probably use her tablet or his computer and want to pull real quick data. So what I needed was more than doing at Tableau level, doing more at SQL level. Other challenge that we have is, for instance, here. Sorry, here. So we have to create like a whole, I don't know if you have tried to make links over the hover. This is complicated. So I don't know why, but Tableau doesn't allow you to put links. So what we did was put in actions. So literally those are actions that you create. Do you see that we have 2 links? Oh, I don't, it got lost.
In the tooltip?
Yeah, because they wanted to have links, but you can't. So you create actions. So it's tricky, but it's doable. So that's the thing that I agree with you. Sometimes Tableau, you have to do works around that is supposed to be more intuitive, but then you don't have that one. So the challenge for me, instead of the data itself, it was convincing people that switching from the table view, from the static one to that. So for instance, one of the things that we like is, for instance, if we want to just compare the same period, or we want to compare two periods. So this allows you to do, okay, in the period 1 I was doing great, but in the fourth one I was even better. So, or maybe I just want to compare, just leave 1 year, and I want to create like something more customized. So that is the thing that we like, to have flexibility to do periods and years, or we won't just compare the final year with the last one. So speed was something that I really need, and that's why we create a materialized view for this particular thing instead of doing the query, because querying this one, it could be slow. The other thing that we create is that we have to modify the metrics. So, and then again, we become very agnostic of the tool. So what we did something in Ruby. I don't know if you're familiar with Ruby. I will show you. So for instance, instead of using Tableau for modifying things, we have this one. So we create an application that allow me to modify the targets. So this is in real time. If I modify here, Tableau will change that one. So this is, again, when you think, how do you think Tableau? We use Ruby for creating this front end to update the information of the KPI. We use Python to clean up the data. Sometimes Python is very useful. We use Python to get like a report from what are the KPIs that are being updated daily, instead of using Tableau. And the other thing that I like to show you is that, and I promise that it will not. So someone asked me, okay, what happens if I delete a dashboard or a KPI? So I keep tracking of what I'm using. So we're not using also Tableau for reporting the KPIs or the metrics, but we also do Tableau for keeping track of what we are changing. So it's not only for information, but also to track ourselves how we are doing. So that's another, we can actually put all the KPIs. So we can have the ones that are working and which one are not, or we deleted or we say retire to the KPI. So this is another twist that we can use Tableau for our own reporting and not for the front end or for the people that is our customers. So final thoughts, I think one of the things is thinking Tableau in a different way, thinking Tableau or trying to use Tableau for going beyond and trying to push yourself. The other thing is that sometimes Tableau can be tricky on how to manage data and especially dates. I really hate dates on Tableau, but you have to think in Tableau way. I mean, trying to work around, as I show you, that simple thing to add links to the tooltip, it took me days just to do that. Because I don't know why doesn't it feel like why you can do that, or having HTML. Other thing that I cannot show you because of the non-disclosure agreement, we did a wiki page where we add all the tableaus, these same tableaus, to put it on the wiki page. Because people, they wanted to have the wiki page with the real data of the tables. It's doable. There is some, in wiki, there are some, what do you call widget or apps that allow you, but trust me, it's slow and it's impossible to do. But the thing is that sometimes you have to give to your user some doing or showing that it's slow. The other thing that it was challenging to me was the speed, because again, these people were probably presenting in a meeting and they want to do like a quick and dirty version. So the last one, and just that's why, for instance, I was creating several dashboards. We call this a standard because this is more easy one. Just we didn't have many filters and just wanted to see, okay, how was this one doing, or what was the other one. So this was meant to a really quick version of the dashboard. So what we was thinking is that maybe the same dashboard, we have different users. Therefore, we need different level of information, or maybe speed. Do you realize that this is even faster than the other one? So again, before I start, one of our problems that we have is that we start doing dashboard and we want to put all the data. But one of my recommendations is think about what would be the usage, or put in the user case of how the user will use it and what will be the problem. So that's my presentation. I don't know if you have any question or any doubt or any criticism. Oh, I don't know.
In terms of the link problem we've had, I faced the same thing. Work around there is an image of either a word or a phrase that you want, or and hyperlink it to whatever website you wanted to do that in the Tableau dashboard.
Yes, that is a good suggestion, but we didn't want to put too many images on the web server because of the speed.
Can you repeat that?
He said that another workaround is to put, let me find the correct image.
An image or an image of a word or a phrase.
Yeah, an image and then put a link over there. Again, this was think to be quick, but again, we are trying to force Tableau to make something that should be more intuitive or more easy to process or to do it. Do you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned when you updated metrics that got pushed real time into the Tableau dashboards. How do you do the real time?
We are not using a struct. We are actually connect live to the database because we don't have. We have not more than 2,000, 3,000 record, so we don't require extracts. So that's why we keep live the database.
Is your dashboard on the Tableau server?
Yes. So you can connect live. Don't say to the Tableau server people, but you can do it.
Depends on the query. You can publish with the live data. That's the issue. As well, like
a million don't do it.
Warehouse and querying that
And that's
delay in the response.
And that's why I said that the view was important to do all the calculation at SQL level, then just be live to the view, and then you reduce a lot of workload on the Tableau server. My rule of thumb is that if you're going to do in SQL, don't do it in SQL, and if hard to do in SQL, do it in Tableau. But Tableau will be always slower than a server, just for speed purpose. Thank you. So I'm glad, and if you have any question, I will also be there. Oh, you can close it.
Yeah, thank you. I really just want to take a moment to remind everyone, first of all, thank you for coming. Thank you to the presenters for presenting. Just a reiteration, we all do such different work at the university. Everyone is very involved in their own piece of this organization that we are all a part of. Some of the dashboards are just super awesome. I mean, when I say awesome, I mean like visually, you're just wow. But I have actually, in my experience, found the most simplest dashboards to be very effective. So each individual person who's thinking about using Tableau or uses Tableau in any way, shape, or form, it's always very gratifying when you conquer a challenge of in Tableau when you come up with a action that references the link instead of, or beating Tableau and figuring out that workaround. It's fantastic. It's the sharing of the knowledge so someone else doesn't have to go through that process, which is what this group is about. So I encourage each individual one of you that if you are just dabbling into Tableau or trying out some dashboards, people who are presenting, if you have a question, you heard something in here, I would imagine, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if you shoot these people an email and be like, I have been working on Tableau Prep and I don't know how to start. Do you have any websites? I would imagine they would be more than happy to give you some direction. When we reach out for presenters, we don't necessarily are looking for, it's great if it just blew you away, like, wow, that's the most amazing thing. But like I said just earlier, I really find a lot of value in the most simplest, where I look at it, I know exactly what that meant, and I don't even know what your data is. So in the future, if you see me typing saying, hey, does anybody want to present? Just know that your message and what you guys are developing or thinking about developing, or maybe it's the process of starting out and thinking about how to develop it, those are just as important as actually developing the dashboard. So just a side note for everyone that it's more selfish on my part. So when I do reach out to you, you guys are like, yeah, I want to go present at this meeting. So anyway, thank you very much. Please take time to talk to one another. If you guys came here and you had a specific question for somebody and you wanted to reach out or just ask or anything, that's what this is for. We'll be around, stick around until everyone leaves. And again, if anybody has any questions online, this would be a time to ask. And if nothing else, then have a great day. Thanks for coming. How do I stop this recording?